might be messy, maybe.
Steve's coming. Speed's coming.
History project?
Speed's coming.
That's more important.
Thanks for making an entrance.
I'd like to call to order the Public Works Committee meeting of December 2nd, 2015. Can I have a roll call, please?
Commissioners Bowman,
Here.
Kalamazoo,
Here.
Siegelman, Sapone,
Here.
Becker.
Here.
Thank you. I'd make a motion to approve the minutes of the October 28th, 2015 Public Works Committee meeting.
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Are there any corrections or additions from anyone present? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
This committee has no scheduled business tonight, and therefore we can move to commissioner comment and public comment immediately. Is there any items that any commissioners would like to raise regarding Public Works?
No.
And does the public have any comment to make on any Public Works items? Staff? Okay, there being no business and no comment from the public, we're going to adjourn this meeting.
Next. I think they're there.
Big piece of property, right? There's plenty of room for everything.
Call to order the Code Enforcement and Land Development Committee meeting for December 2nd, 2015. And may I have a roll call, please? Here.
Here. Here.
Here.
We'll start with a motion to approve the minutes of the October 28th, 2015 Code Enforcement and Land Development Committee meeting, and I so move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any comments or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Minutes are approved. Tonight we have CE1 subdivision SD 1504, Gordon B. and Christina M. Cox, 1544 Cloverly Lane. This is a motion to approve the subdivision application of Gordon B. and Christina M. Cox, owners of the property located at 1544 Cloverly Lane. The applicants propose to subdivide the 2.98 acre site into two parcels. Lot number 1 is shown to contain the existing single-family dwelling on a parcel of 1.98 acres in size. Lot number 2 is not proposed to be developed at this time and is shown at 1 acre in lot size. Both lots will comply with the dimensional requirements of Section 301.3 of the zoning ordinance. The properties are zoned in the R1 residential district in Ward number 1 of the Township of Abington, and the motion subject to conditions and waivers as listed in the agenda, and I so move.
Second.
And moved and seconded. Director Mateo, do you have the
applicant
applicants?
is here, Mr. Nick Rose, who is the engineer, and I believe he's going to just present the plan. And of course, as you received, this was approved by the Abington Township Planning Commission and of course the Montgomery County Planning Commission.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Good evening, Nick Rose from Protract Engineering, and with me is Bruce Cox, the owner of the property. I think you've read into the record almost all the pertinent information about this. The property, here's School Lane on this plan, here's Cloverleaf coming down here, and then Rydell Road comes up here, so down here is Susquehanna. So right now it's a 2.9 acre property. Mr. Cox's house is about in here, and his driveway comes up like this. And what he would like to do is just take off this 1 acre lot down here and subdivide it off. It's all compliant with the zoning regulations. We've read through the letter from staff and have no problem with their comments. There are some waivers they note that are typical of a minor subdivision such as this. We were asked to just demonstrate that a house could in fact fit on the new lot, and we did do that and showed that to the Planning Commission. And they seem satisfied with how we have that shown. That can also be put in compliant with zoning.
Also, I want to mention about the driveway.
Oh, yes, there was a question about just making sure that any driveway from the new house had room to get out to the street, and the best place for it was determined to be at sort of the southern end of the property, down near the bottom of the plan. And that is where we show the proposed driveway would be on that side of the road to avoid some of the woodlands and steep areas farther up.
And the intent is not to disturb any of the tree, or to minimize the disturbance of the trees. We saw that in...
Correct. There is an area of the property where the house is proposed that's virtually free of trees. Yes.
Commissioner Gillespie.
Thank you. And at this point, there's no plan for a house, is that correct? That you
Correct.
just-
We were asked to show something schematically, but there's no buyer and there's no builder.
Okay, thank you.
What he's showing, Carl, is so that the house will be code compliant on this property, and then at the request of the planning commissions, both Montgomery County and Abington, about the driveway, keeping it out of the steep slope.
Comments from other commissioners? Commissioner Klein.
Yeah, Larry, so when they come in, since this won't require land development, they'll still go through a review as to whether there's any effect on, when it actually gets developed, on steep slopes, and
It'll go through, it'll go through our review.
if it needs steep slope, special exception or variance, it
If
would be...
it's required, if it's needed, that is correct, sir.
And has the, I don't know, Al, have you looked at this, any concerns about the corner and any restrictions on where the driveway might want to go? Here they show it coming up on the left-hand side, going up Bottle Road.
I haven't seen the plan at this point, so I wouldn't be able to comment.
Other commissioner comments? Stephen,
Yeah, I did have
Commissioner
one.
Klein, were you?
Nick, is it possible to get a driveway up on the right-hand side? I'm not suggesting I want it there, I'm just...
I think it would certainly be possible. It would just be less desirable because you
That
actually
would
have
come right
you have a
out.
bigger grade drop, and you'd have to go through the wooded areas and through one of the steep slope areas.
And come right out and right out in the intersection, actually.
Right, and I think actually we have better sight distance down at the location at the bottom of the site. Well, bottom of the site vertically, it's a little bit higher, so less of a drop.
Is it possible to put a restriction on it to keep the driveway on that left property line going up Rydell Road?
Are you willing to,
I don't think we'd have a problem with such a restriction, no.
you want to add something into that, Stephen?
Yeah, I'd like to avoid any possibility of it going right out into the intersection. Because that car coming down that driveway on the right-hand side, which would be closer to Mr. Cox's property, would actually come right out into where Rydell Road going up towards Woodland enters into Cloverly.
You're talking about where the angled intersection, where they come together. Yes,
that-
it'd certainly be better to avoid that.
Yeah. So if we can amend the motion, or if the committee would so choose to amend the motion to put an additional condition to have the driveway, I guess that would be, is that the southeastern corner, I guess? Southwestern corner? Can't read the north.
Yeah, it's more or less the southwest corner, yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
I have no problem with that, so I'll make the motion to amend the motion as described by Commissioner Klein. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor on the amendment?
Aye.
Aye. The motion is so amended. Any other comments from commissioners? Just one thing, I covered this with Director Mateo, but this is not an area that has sidewalks in the neighborhood, right? I mean, obviously it's busy. Just wanted to make that point clear, so we're not, with the waiver for that, it's not an area that,
Go, as we always say, go to nowhere.
sidewalk to nowhere, but not an area that it would ever be anticipated for future,
Not in my lifetime.
well, that,
Since I've been with this.
thank you, Director. Any other commissioners, staff, questions or comments from the audience? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion's approved. Thank you, Mr.
Great,
Rose.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have CE2, ordinance number 2100, Stormwater Management Ordinance, Tookonee-Tacony Frankfurt Watershed Stormwater Management Plan. This is a motion to advertise a public hearing to be held on Thursday, January 14th, 2016, at 7:30 p.m. on ordinance number 2100 entitled Stormwater Management Ordinance, and I so move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any, could we just get a little background, Director Matteo? I know it's a lengthy document, or
We
if it's...
pushed this off from last month because of the timing of our meetings. This ordinance was prepared by Michael Philmeyer from BCM. We had all this. He's been working closely with Mark Fenicow, who's sitting in the back. Is he still awake?
He's awake.
And the ordinance was revised by was reviewed by the Abington Township Planning Commission on October 27th. Several grammatical corrections were suggested, and that's why we held it off for another month. It's coming back. The review, the revised revision will be going to, and of course, just so you make note, the December Planning Commission meeting will be on Monday, December 14th. We're going to have that. And so that's, you'll see that. All of you have a copy of it. And Michael, did you want to make any comments on that?
No, it's pretty much the same ordinance we've had all along, and we're following the same policies that we've been following all along on stormwater.
So it's basically to guarantee compliance with...
Yes.
It makes us compliant because of the new regulations and
The new state regulations.
new state regulations, and make sure we're in compliance and we don't get into trouble with the state.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Powers. Any comments from commissioners? Commissioner Klein.
It's fair to say that this was discussed during the zoning ordinance rewrite and pulled out because we have to do it statutorily by the end of the year. But one thing is the county has a model ordinance that is state compliant, and we actually, our floodplain ordinances are going to be, our stormwater floodplain ordinances are going to be more restrictive than the county's model ordinance, which is state compliant. So we chose to keep ours the way it has been, which is more restrictive. So
Great. Thank you for that.
Also, Mr. Chairman, both ordinances that are proposed this evening for public hearing are on our webpage.
Great. Thank you, Director Matteo. Okay. Any other comments from commissioners? Any other staff? Comments from the audience?
Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane. My question is whether the basins that are the Army Corps of Engineers is proposing in Abington on Highland in the Baderwood Park and across the street from that and behind Winding Road and Wooded Road, next to Pleasant and Pine Tree Road and so on. Are they covered in this ordinance in any way? In other words, I haven't read the whole ordinance, but are they regulated in this ordinance, or are they regulated in our ordinance, which is more restrictive?
Not sure technically.
Michael, do you want to elaborate? I wasn't at that meeting.
I'm not in a position to answer that question at this point. We do have a meeting scheduled in 2 weeks with the Corps of Engineers, so it'll be open to the public on December 16th, where we hope to get more information from the Corps' plan. Ms. Lehman is referring to a feasibility study prepared by the Corps of Engineers working with Cheltenham Township, which proposes 6 retention areas in Cheltenham and 3 in Abington Township. Commissioner Sanchez and Commissioner Spiegelman and I met with the Corps and requested a meeting with the public and any residents surrounding these areas, so they're in a position to ask questions and receive information and provide public comment back to the Corps of Engineers. We've also asked the Corps to extend the comment period to the end of January. At the present time, that comment period expires December 21st. So we're going to provide sufficient time for our residents to gather information and be in a position to respond to the Corps. So at this point, a meeting is scheduled for December 16th here at the Township Building for residents and the Corps to gather more information.
I think it'd be fair to say that this ordinance will likely be passed in advance of a plan of which we're speaking from the Army Corps that may never happen or may happen, years in the future. But so this ordinance would govern that, but
That is correct, and we're mandated to pass this ordinance. There's a strict timeline we have to comply with. The plan for the Corps of Engineers is a feasibility study at this point. Depending on the input received from the public, it would move on to the design and development stage. It could take another 18 months. So we're looking at several years down the road before anything will materialize in regard to these retention areas.
Okay.
Thank you, Manager
Thank you,
Lefevre.
and I
Thank
trust
you.
that the residents nearby would all get individually noticed rather.
In fact, that's the
Thank you so much.
plan. Commissioner Spiegelman.
Thank you, Commissioner Sanchez. If I could just add to that, since this came up, letters did go out, thanks to Manager Lefevre and Zoning Officer Penicow, to all the residents who would even remotely abut these proposed basins, and again, they are just proposed, and inviting them to this meeting on the 16th. And we did actually, Commissioner Sanchez and I were able to get quite a bit of information through this preliminary meeting with the Army Corps of Engineers on our behalf and also on Commissioner Farron's behalf. He provided questions that we asked of the Army Corps of Engineers additionally. And all of that information, in addition to going out in these letters and being advertised by the township, is going to be going out in our individual newsletters to our constituents. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Spiegelman. Commissioner Gillespie.
Just one comment. I have been to the Cheltenham meetings since my ward abuts Cheltenham, and they do a really good job, Army Corps of Engineers, to explain it to everybody, so I'm sure they'll do good for you guys.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, Commissioner Gillespie. Anyone else? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
And then finally, CE3, ordinance number 2102, an ordinance amending Chapter 162, zoning, Section 2102, floodplain conservation overlay district. This is a motion to advertise a public hearing to be held on Thursday, January 14th, 2016, at 7:30 p.m. on ordinance number 2102, the floodplain ordinance, and I so move. Been moved and seconded. As Director Mateo said, and Mr. Powers, this is a mandated thing of the same ilk as the prior item. Commissioner Luker.
Okay, thank you, sir. Michael, how is the temple study? It still hasn't been approved yet, right? And my question is going to be, if and when it does get approved, is it going to have any impact on the floodplain ordinance?
Well, it won't have an impact on the floodplain ordinance, but it will have an impact on the zones. Now, the temple study for the Pennypack has been approved.
Right.
And
Oh, it has
one
been?
for the
Okay.
Wissahickon has been approved, but the Tokenie they're still working on that one. But there doesn't look like they're going to change, those two floodplain areas are going to change much anyway, as far as the temple study. Of course, on the Sandy Run, the big culvert is down in over Dublin, underneath the Fitzwater Road.
Right.
And that causes all the backup into Abington. And down on the Tokenie, it's the culvert under Standard Press Steel, Standard Press Steel underneath the railroad tracks, which also causes the backwater effect back up through Abington. So without changing those two locations, one is in Cheltenham, the other is in Upper Dublin, which we don't have any control over, we're kind of locked in with our floodplain.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Any other comments from commissioners, any staff, or audience? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries. And we will take comments on general matters of code enforcement and land development.
Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane, so I would just ask Commissioner Klein if he would like to apologize. I suggested that at a zoning rewrite meeting, he said that they were possibly not going to advertise this, and I have your words exactly from that meeting. You said you weren't at that meeting. I didn't say that. Maybe he'd like to apologize. Maybe he's seen the tape since. So I'll leave that opportunity open for him. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for leaving that opportunity open for me.
Any closing commissioner comments? No? No. Oh,
I have a comment.
Commissioner.
I'd just like to make a general comment. I have found in my life that if you have to ask for an apology and you get one, it's probably insincere, so it's probably better not to ask. And if you get one, then it is sincere.
Thank you for that insight, Commissioner
Sure.
Myers. And may I-
61 years to get to that point.
do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
We are adjourned.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Public Safety Committee meeting for December 2nd, 2015. Can I have a roll call, please? Here.
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 Good price.
Here. Here.
Thank you. And now I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of October 28th, 2015 Public Safety Committee meeting, and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any corrections or additions to the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes stand as approved. And now our Police Chief Kelly has his police report.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, several things to report to you tonight. First of all, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, we've all seen the tragic incidents that occurred in Paris, France, and you'll recall that police are receiving some criticism for not having entered the theater sooner than they did, and of course people were killed during that intervening time period. And that's a relatively new phenomenon that we're seeing all across the world, and certainly law enforcement is having to deal with. It used to be back in the day, the time was always on the police side. They would always say, you wait, and it's on your side. Ever since Columbine, of course, that whole image has changed, and yet in many cases, law enforcement hasn't changed with it. And I just wanted to reassure you and the public that our officers have been been thoroughly trained on a thing called immediate deployment. And it even involves up to as small as a one-officer deployment. If an officer gets on the scene and finds that there is a situation where there's violence being done to innocent citizens, that they assess the situation and, if appropriate, don't even wait for any backup, but go in and try to address the target to stop the killing or the injuring of innocent people, or in smaller groups. And it's a pretty different and dynamic approach to law enforcement. It's very different, and we still see many taking the long-term approach. The SWAT teams all fitted out and all moving in together. And in most cases, it's long, long after all of the violence is over with. And so I just want to tell you about that because it's taking there's been a lot of training involved with that, because it's now not just a special group of SWAT-trained officers getting this training, but every one of our officers, so that if they get in that situation, they're able to respond immediately and handle it. And just wanted to talk to you about that because it's kind of a topical issue after that terrible tragedy that we all witnessed in Paris, France. Second topic I want to talk to you about tonight is that we just finished our on-site evaluation for the Commission on Law Enforcement Accreditation. You know that there's 1,117 law enforcement agencies in Pennsylvania. About 100 of them are state accredited. As you know, your police department was the first one in the state to become state accredited and continues to be state accredited. Out of all of those law enforcement agencies, there's about 6 municipal police departments that have gone on and gotten international accreditation through CALIA accreditation. And of course, Abington Police Department is one of those, has been reaccredited several times. Because of the outstanding job that they did in previous accreditations, we were invited to participate in a whole new level of accreditation they've never had before. It's called the Gold Standard. In fact, it's so new that I don't think any of the other accredited departments in the state have had the opportunity to even apply for it. But we applied for that. We're accepted for that new level, the highest level of accreditation internationally available. and went through that accreditation process and just completed it. We won't know the final results for a while yet, but certainly because of the feedback, we can tell that there are a lot of good things going on, and I interviewed a lot of people in the organization and around the community and know that. I just wanted to mention that especially because a couple people were really instrumental in that are in the room today. Lieutenant Kelly Warner was our chief accreditation person in the department this time around. We've changed that a couple times so that more members that are up and coming in the department will get that exposure and get that training, and she handled it this time and did a really outstanding job at this new and highest level of challenge. So I want to thank you for that, Lieutenant. Great job. And, of course, sitting next to her is Deputy Chief John Livingood, who always is at the heart of all of the good things that go on in the department, and he was very instrumental in this as well. And so that was something that we're very proud of. We'll keep you abreast of how that comes out as far as their assessment and the final analysis on it, but it's something that was a major challenge for the department, and we just went through it, so I wanted to advise you about that. Finally, the third and final topic I wanted to talk to you about is that it's about 2.5, 3 years ago we started talking to you about what we started seeing, our officers started seeing, and Second Larimer started seeing this dramatic increase in opioid addiction, overdose, and deaths in our township, as well as hearing about it in others. And we talked to you about that and doing some things about that. We actually brought that information up to Chairman of the County Commissioners, Josh Shapiro, who then moved on that and put together a countywide drug overdose task force that Commissioner is our chairperson is Lori Schreiber, and I are co-chairs of, and he appointed us as co-chairs, and we've been looking at and working on that particular thing. But there's also been a lot of work done in Abington Township, and so we have a couple people going to make a brief presentation to you tonight at the request of a member of the board about the situation in Abington Township. And but before I call on Deputy Chief John Livingood to do that for us, I just want to say that a tremendous amount of credit has to go to our colleagues from Second Larimers who are here and will be talking tonight as well. But I just need to say that in advance, because the reason that we're so far advanced in it is because they have coached us and trained us and guided us and given us direction. And the reason that we've been able to do it is because we work with such a great organization as Second Larimers, and they deserve a lot of credit. So, Madam Chair, if I could, I'd like to call on Deputy Chief John Livingood to give that brief presentation.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm going to ask Lieutenant Warner to join me here, and Chief John Klink, if you'd come up here, please. As the Chief indicated, we've had a tremendous increase in drug overdoses, and as you've been reading in the SCAR, no doubt, even more important and even more concerning is drug overdose that result in deaths. So, as Chief indicated, that Chief Kelly, Commissioner Schreiber, they co-chair a committee at the county level that is addressing this on a county-wide scale, along with the incoming district attorney, Kevin Steele, and others. And you'll be hearing more about that without question in the future. But for tonight, we just want to give you an update on where we stand in Abington Township, what we've been seeing, what we have done to address it. Late in 2014, we realized this trend was really increasing, and that's when we began our program to have a drug that would combat these cases out there on the scene. That drug is, of course, called Narcan. That's a drug you've heard a lot about, and we're going to do a little demonstration. I'm going to have Lieutenant Warner just show you what this thing actually looks like. Go ahead.
Good evening. It's very simple. When the police officer, I know, I'm no Vanna White, first off, I just want you to know that. And I don't know how I got suckered into this, but I did. Anyway, when the police officer arrives on scene and it's evident that there is some sort of an overdose from an opiate, the person is unresponsive, there may be evidence of drug activity there, needles or whatnot. Each officer is carrying this very small device, and simply it's just like this, and it talks to you.
This trainer contains no needle or drug. If you are ready to use, pull off red safety guard. To inject, place black end against outer thigh, then press firmly and hold in place for 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Injection complete.
It's just that simple, and
This trainer may be reused for training purposes.
fortunately, and the residents are more fortunate, that second alarmers are generally just minutes or even seconds behind us. But in that instant, the officers are able to provide some relief to the patient who appears to be in a drug overdose. And believe me, the police officers are very happy when John and his crew arrive to take over in that crisis situation.
Thank you, Lieutenant. So because of this tremendous increase, we got involved in this program, and we could not have done this without the second alarmer's support along the way. They were able to obtain for us $25,000 worth of this product free of charge to the citizens of Abington Township. So far, this program has cost us no out-of-pocket money whatsoever. And that's really a credit to them. And at the same time, they are getting this for us. They're actually paying roughly $55 per dose of the product that they have to administer when they come out on the scene. So they got it for us for free. They couldn't do the same for themselves. But, John, we appreciate all you've done. In addition to that, they did all the training for us, and they continue to support this program, as they have so many other things that we do here in Abington Township. As the Lieutenant said, our officers all carry this. They carry a little pouch on their pockets, on their belt, rather. They sometimes get to the scene before the second alarmers. Sometimes they get there before us. Sometimes we're there together. But as happened in many of these cases, our officers have given a dose of it, and it didn't quite do the job, and then the second alarmers arrive, they give another dose of it, and that does revive the person. But a critical aspect of this, and something that is more important than actually administering this drug, is the rescue breathing. When we get to one of these overdoses and the person is not breathing, which is the effect that narcotic has on the body, the important thing is that rescue breathing takes place immediately, and then the drug, which will eventually revive the person. The numbers that we've been dealing with, as I indicated, we've had 12 deaths this year from drug overdoses. That's a tremendous number, much bigger than I've ever seen here. And they run the gamut from last week. We had a 17-year-old girl in the Elkins Park section of the township. A couple days later, we had a 35-year-old man live down in Betterwood. And so it's all over the place. It's all over the township. There's no areas that are immune from this. There's no age groups. There's no way to predict where this is going to rear its ugly head. But it is fatal. We've seen too much of it. And 12 is a big number for Abington Township. We have actually administered this 13 times this year. We have used this product. Now, 4 of them were in combination with second alarmers. And as I indicate, the way that occurs is typically our officers get there, they give the Narcan, and the second alarmers come in, and they give a second dose, and then the person sometimes comes around. 3 of the times that we did it, the person did not survive. Now, the reason for that was very simple. They were already too far gone, and the officers just did what they could, gave the Narcan, but it was futile. So what we can deduce from that is that there were 10 cases where Abington Police Department administered rescue breathing and worked in concert with the second alarmers and administered this drug, and it did contribute to life-saving measures, those combination of efforts. So we think this is an important thing that we're doing, an important service for our citizens, and I think 5 other departments in Montgomery County have now joined us in that. We were the original ones, the first ones to get on board, and I think largely since they've seen the success that we've had with it, 5 others have joined us, and I don't think that'll be the end of it either. I would imagine there's going to be more in the future. And I'm going to ask Chief Klink, do you want to add anything?
Thank you for your remarks, Chief and Lieutenant Warner. Good evening. I had the opportunity to pull some data some additional facts related to Narcan and overdose as I have accessible to me at the Second Alarmers. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the hard work of my team. I'm only as good as the team that I have, and I have a phenomenal command staff, and the troops out there that are doing this every day are some of the best in the county. And I say that as a resident and a guy that has parents that live in the township. We really do have a phenomenal team. Special credit to Assistant Chief Ken Davidson, who has really done a lot of this work. He's been on the forefront of not only securing the funding, the $25,000 worth of product, but also working at the site alongside of the police department and the county officials on the task force. Year to date, Second Alarmers has responded to 84 overdose calls in Abington Township. This represents approximately 1.66% of our calls in the township. The thing that's difficult for me to say is those overdose, the way those calls are categorized as an overdose could include things such as alcohol or prescription medication overdoses. So we can't say that those are pure opiate overdoses. And as a matter of fact, I can tell you they're not all opiate overdoses. Looking at the data year to date for 2015, it appears as if we've given 39 doses of Narcan or naloxone on 28 separate patient encounters, and that's specific to Abington Township. So again, that's 39 doses, 28 separate patient encounters. Reviewing over the last several years, going back to 2010, these numbers are a little higher than the previous 2 years, but we have seen numbers as high as 40 and 30 back in 2010. So just to recap, year to date, we've responded to 5,055 calls for service in Abington Township. Narcan was given on 0.5% of those, so it is a very small percentage, but it's significant in some of these encounters are seriously sick people with life-threatening situations. We continue to track the specific information on overdose calls. We work closely with the police department here at Abington, both our command staff and the command staff at Abington, meeting regularly to exchange and review the data that's being collected and review each deployment of Narcan. As you heard, the Second Alarmers has been able to secure donations for these auto injectors. They're approximately $250 a piece. Second Alarmers doesn't use these as our first line agents. We use intravenous mechanisms as well as intranasal mechanisms, so our dosing is a little cheaper at $55 a dose, but we've seen that price almost double since over the last year or so. So I hope that that's helpful in terms of a summary of some of the data that I have accessible if anybody would like further information.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes,
The 39 times that the Second Alarmers use it, 13 from the police was in addition to that, so it's actually 52, or is that including?
It's most likely including. Again, our data, the way that we track it, I can't specifically identify opiate-only overdoses. So,
But that was the times that you've used Narcan. The 39 was the amount of times that the Second Alarmers have used Narcan?
Correct.
And then there was 13 times that the police have used it? So it's 52 altogether.
Doses. So 28 encounters, year-to-date 2015.
Yeah, because sometimes they get more than one, right?
Yeah, and I think that you can, there's there's situations outside of what I would describe as a typical overdose situation. For instance, we could respond to a call for a subject that's having a respiratory depression or respiratory difficulty as a result of taking too much morphine after surgery. We could give Narcan to that individual. That doesn't represent a heroin or a street drug overdose. So overdoses for us is more of a global, we're seeing a little bit more than just the street use of heroin, things like that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Commissioner Sanchez.
Thank you, Chief. This one may be for Deputy Chief Livingood or whoever, but you may have said it, but is every officer carrying this?
Not quite every officer, but we have a sufficient quantity of officers in every platoon that are trained and carry this stuff. So it's, I would say the majority of the officers have it out there. At all times, we have it in close proximity to all areas.
Great. And that would include the mall and
Yes.
the schools?
Yes, that's correct.
Great. Thank you.
Commissioner DePlacido.
Thanks. This is also for Deputy Chief Living Good. You said we have a supply that we've received free. How much exactly do we have? in
How much do we
reserves?
have?
Yeah.
We have enough now. The expiration on the current supply is April. So by 2016 in April, we're going to have to replace that supply. Now, I've already talked to our friends at the Second Alarmers. They're already working on getting a donation of additional product from the manufacturer for us, and we're hopeful it'll be successful. So all of that will have to be replaced. In addition to what the officers carry, we have a number of others that we keep upstairs that we can replace it as soon as it's depleted.
Okay. One of the reasons I asked, and this is jumping off a lot of the facts that you gave, is that I have read some interesting articles about the epidemic. I don't know if you recall, but I think it was almost a year and a half ago at the same committee, I did say that this was truly an epidemic, and it was in everyone's backyard. After reading a lot of the data after the fact, it's no longer in the backyard, it's knocking on our front door. I believe that Pennsylvania, the death rates of overdoses between males, I think it's 18 to 25, has doubled in the last decade, and now Pennsylvania has the most deaths in that age frame of males from overdoses or opioid overdoses. I wasn't trying to joke about like if we've had enough, but I'm almost afraid that we may run out. And then I think we need to channel more efforts now, and I'm glad that Chief Kelly and Commissioner Schreiber are on this countywide board, but I do feel the need that we need something a bit more local. Bucks County, and I believe it's Gloucester County, New Jersey, have the highest rates of death overall in the tri-state area, and it more than triples the city of Philadelphia, the numbers of their deaths. So, again, it's not a backyard thing anymore. It's right in front of us. So I'd be interested in some dialogue at another time about something locally that we can do to not have to use the Narcan so much. I'm glad we all have. I'm glad many of the officers have it. It's needed. It's necessary. But prevention is where it's at right now, and we need to start talking about it a little bit more thoroughly.
Well, I think we can say that on the county level, that's one of the focuses was prevention. And in addition, we're looking at warm handoffs so that like the Second Alarmers or the police or whatever, instead of just having somebody go back out, they're saved by Narcan and then they go back out on the streets, that they are encouraged to go into treatment at that point. So that, I would think, would be one of the next places that we would really work to have everybody trained to be able to give that information or go to somebody that has that information. Chief Kelly?
Madam Chair, we'd really be remiss if we didn't mention the fact that Commissioner DePlacido's wife is actually on the committee with us, the countywide committee with us, and has made considerable contributions in that regard and brings a lot of expertise to us with that and ideas, and is right on top of that as well. So, Commissioner, you can rest assured that this is something we're right on top of. The district attorney has used drug asset seizure funds to purchase a future allocation for any police department in the county that wants to get involved with it. So it doesn't look like the supply of the Narcan and naloxone is going to be an issue, and I think that many other places are going to get on board. Right now, we're only one of 5 in the county out of the 54 police departments that are using it, but I think more are going to get involved over time as they see the successes that we and other departments have had.
Commissioner Jones?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. You mentioned that there's not all of these are as a result of opiate overdose. So am I safe to assume that after the medical incident takes place, that there is an investigation to make sure that it is what the actual cause is? And then if it is an opiate, are those people automatically charged? Or are they specifically sent somewhere? What is the after effect?
Commissioner, we have not charged anybody as a result of these overdoses. That's certainly something that has come up a couple of times and possibly is something we'll have to address in the future. The way that we determine typically what the overdose is many times we'll find a product at the scene. Heroin's typically packaged in little plastic bags, and it is often stamped with a unique stamp. It's kind of like a trademark, and that's the way we track that sometimes, or the hypodermic needle. Unfortunately, some family members have, I guess, thought it best to clean up the scene, and that stuff is all gone when we get there, and we don't know for sure what it was that they took. I can tell you in the cases that I was talking about, and I think Chief Clink can maybe comment on this as well, but in the cases that I've talked about, there was a few of them that were pure heroin overdoses, and some of those we know from the coroner's reports had fentanyl in them. You've heard a lot about that. There's been cases where people think they're taking heroin, they're in fact taking pure fentanyl, which is much, much more potent. But more typically, what we have found out is that there is a whole cocktail of drugs in these individuals' systems. The reason being that people that abuse drugs, they don't typically have just one drug. That they'll try anything and everything in order to get where they need to go. And so some of the coroner's toxicology reports we've gotten back on these fatal overdoses have had like 4, 5, and 6 controlled substances or narcotics in their system. So, and you want to talk about that, John?
Sure. The other thing that I would add, or maybe even clarify based on my original remarks, would be when an EMS agency is dispatched to an overdose in Montgomery County, this is a catch-all for multiple things. So if somebody's ingested too much alcohol and they have an altered mental status or they're not effectively breathing, if somebody had excessive pain medication after surgical procedure, things like that, that would actually be coded as an overdose, and that's how we're dispatched. So I'm careful to report, and give you specific data on Narcan, which is specific for opiates, but when we talk about 88 overdose calls in Abington Township, obviously that includes other, non-street drugs or medications.
Thank you. You may have touched on this. I'm hoping the answer is no. But for those Narcan incidents where the person, thankfully, was not a fatality, there haven't been any repeat customers, so to speak, have there?
We have not, but in talking to colleagues in other locations, just recently I talked to somebody from Maryland, and they actually had Narcaned the same person twice in the same day, and believe it or not. So we haven't experienced anything like that, and we have not had, in the numbers that I'm talking about, we have not seen the same names twice.
Thank you.
Commissioner, just a couple other comments about that. The relatively recent state law exempts people who report a situation where a person is in overdose from prosecution. So anyone that is on the scene or the individual themselves is exempted from prosecution even though they're in possession of the controlled substance. And the reason the state passed that law, of course, is because people were reluctant to call. They would leave the scene, let the person die there rather than call because they were afraid they were going to get arrested. So the state law gives them an exemption in that situation, provided that they call or take someone to the hospital, that they will not be prosecuted in that situation. However, I understand exactly where you're going with it, and your point is really well taken, because the countywide drug overdose task force has set up as one of its major priorities is that if a person is going to be saved through the naloxone, or we come in contact with them in a situation, that we then link them into a system where we can start this recovery process and overcoming the addiction process, because it is crazy to be doing this over and over again and us not doing something to make sure we deal with the problem. So that is one of our highest priorities at the County Overdose Task Force, and because we understand exactly what you're saying, the craziness of that continuing that cycle. So you're absolutely right, Commissioner.
Thank you. Could you clarify one thing? Because I think I get what you're saying. So I'm walking, let's say, in the mall, and I see a person who passes out, what have you. I've never been around a drug overdose. I see somebody who I think is on an opiate. I call the police or responders. 911 is the number, or 11 for short. And when they come, I'm just an innocent bystander, but I'm definitely not going to be prosecuted. If there's quantities of drugs on the person who I didn't know, who was the victim, they wouldn't be prosecuted for that as well. Everybody kind of gets like, for lack of a better term, absolved.
That's correct, Commissioner. Under most circumstances, that's true. Even if you were the person who was shooting up with that person, and then you saw that person go into a situation like that, and you called 911, even though you actually had ingested it right with that person, you would still not be charged in that situation because you're the one that called to save their life. So that's how that works. Now, there's some exceptions to it, but generally speaking, that's the law.
And it makes sense.
Commissioner Spiegelman?
Yeah, I just have one technical question and then just one comment. I guess, Chief Klink, this is probably for you. I know Deputy Chief Livingood mentioned that the current supply, or the police department's current supply of Narcan expires in April. When you get a fresh supply, sort of brand new supply of Narcan, what is generally the shelf life before expiration date? Is it like a sort of a year thing, or?
Generally speaking, it's approximately a year, but that's somewhat dependent on the supplier and what they're giving us. Some medications have longer shelf lives, but generally speaking, the injectable Narcan's had about a year, 12-month shelf life. That's been available to us, sir.
Thank you. And
Commissioner, one of the reasons that
please.
the other departments initially decided not to do it was because it also has to be, the temperature has to be controlled. Extreme heat or extreme cold degrades the product, and so therefore it can't be like left in the police cars. It just won't work that way, and so that's one of the reasons why they decided that they would not bother with it. And we've gotten over that pretty much by putting it on the officers themselves. And so the combination of they're in the reasonable temperatures and their body temperature and so on keeps it usually within an acceptable range, so there's not that degradation of the product.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Chief Klink. Just one comment. This is something that Deputy Chief Livingood brought up directly. As we all saw in the SCAR, the Serious Criminal Activity Report that we and the department heads all get from the police department. In the last, over the last couple of reports, there were these two fatalities, two fatal overdoses that the deputy chief mentioned, and the one that he mentioned, the 17-year-old girl. I bring this up because actually I've been haunted by the text of that little report, that little item in the SCAR, and as you all probably know, it reads very simply: a woman went to check on her 17-year-old daughter and found that she had died. And then, of course, it goes on to explain it was an opiate overdose. But that was one of the most heartbreaking things I've ever read. And it hits home exactly what Commissioner DiPlacido was talking about, that this is something that is pervasive. It's pervasive in our community, in our Commonwealth, and throughout the country. And so I'm truly impressed and in awe of all the lives that our second alarmers and our police department have saved by using Narcan. And I just want to applaud you, and also applaud Chief Kelly and Commissioner Schreiber, and also Ms. Lisa Kelly, Commissioner DiPlacido's wife, for all of their hard work on the County Overdose Committee. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Thank you very much. Good presentation. Chief Kelly, do you have anything else this evening?
No, Madam Chair, that's all. Thank you for the indulgence, Commissioners. We knew this was a topic that was certainly near and dear to everyone's heart, and wanted to make sure that everybody knew what was going on with it, because there's a lot going on, and it's a very serious problem. And I just want to offer one more thing that, we sometimes talk about these different things that we're all trying. The board and the administration is trying in Abington that you don't see sometimes in other places. And the reason is obvious, because we've committed. This committee is committed and the board's committed, And we've committed to try to do everything we can to try to protect our citizens, to save lives. And so we try innovative things sometimes to do that. And sometimes we take some heat for trying different things. But I think it's important that the public understands the reason that we do those things, and that is because we care and we're trying to do everything possible to try to save lives and save our citizens and keep them safe.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief. Now we'll start our regular agenda. PS1, it's a motion to adopt ordinance number 2103, amending Chapter 156, Vehicles and Traffic, Article 3, Parking Regulations, Section 25, parking prohibited at all times, no parking between signs, no parking here to corner, parking prohibited except certain hours, no stopping or standing at the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Commissioners on December 10th, 2015, at 7:30 p.m., and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any comments on PS1 from Commissioners? Commissioner Myers.
Thank you. I would like to just bring attention to one of the items on this ordinance, no parking on the west side of Coolidge Avenue from Rubicam to Phipps. This is the side of Coolidge where Willow Hill School is, and it is because of the school that we need this. Officer Freed has been out several times with me at 10 after 3 to look at this, and this has caused a real problem because parking on both sides of the streets does not allow two-way traffic, and there's been some minor accidents, mostly side view mirrors. But for this 25 minutes a day, it has really been a horrendous problem. And I want to bring attention to it because it will affect a lot of parents who are picking up their children at that time of the day at Willow Hill. So we are working with the school district in having some kind of a pick-up and drop-off area that's being worked on, but provided this ordinance passes at the full board meeting, this will disallow that parking on that side of the street, which will not affect any homes because this is a park area from the school down to Phipps. Thank you.
Thank you for that explanation. Any other comments on PS1? Commissioners? Staff or audience? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. PS2 is a motion to adopt ordinance number 2104 at the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Commissioners on December 10th at 7:30 p.m. This is a motion of a capital project county radio purchase, which we don't have on here.
I'll second it.
Sorry. Second.
I didn't move it yet, but yeah,
Oh, yeah,
okay,
okay.
it's moved. And I so move.
Okay.
Second.
And
Second.
seconded. Any comments or questions on PS2?
Nope.
Commissioners, staff, audience? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. PS3 is a motion to advertise ordinance number 2106, amending Chapter 156, Vehicles and Traffic, Article 3, Parking Regulations, Section 25, Parking Prohibited at all times, no parking between signs, no parking here to corner, parking prohibited except certain hours, no stopping or standing, Section 27, parking time limited, and Section 28, special purpose parking zones for adoption at the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Commissioners on January 14th, 2016 at 7:30 p.m., and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Commissioner Farron, is this what
Yeah,
you'd
I'd
like
like
to speak on?
Thank you, Commissioner Schreiber. I think we all know parking is an issue for Abington Township. I think in Glenside alone, off the top of my head, I can think of at least 10 situations where parking is a concern. Commissioner Myers just talked about parking in her ward. And in many cases, we've been able to avoid coming to the board in Ward 12 with some parking issues because we have great neighbors. We've got business owners who are conscientious. Mr. Mateo has been, who's not here right now, of course, when I'm complimenting him, has been to many meetings and has been very helpful. Officer Freed, Officer Posey, and in this particular case, Mr. Michelow, Mr. Ponte-Landolfo from Public Works came out to offer their insight as well. This particular area is a little bit unique. We're talking about years of problems in parking to go all the way back to the previous commissioner for the residents in this particular area. And Keswick itself, people tend to think it's only because of the shows, and in reality, there are within that area 5 separate parking issues. And this is just one that's been going on for years. So what I wanted to do real quickly is just, I printed out some pictures for you to get a feel for it. The residents had a meeting a couple months ago, and we sat down and talked about some of these situations. And every single resident, Mr. Manager LaFever has a copy of the form. Every single resident on the block has signed. It's a unanimous consent with every single one of the neighbors for both of these aspects of the ordinance. And if you look at the pictures there, the bottom row, the main issue, as much as it can be an issue, and the neighbors will come up, there's a couple of neighbors here who might come up and speak, can talk to you about that shows can be a problem, but they're not the issue. They know they live in Keswick Village. They know some of the challenges there. The main issue tends to be during the course of the day. When they leave for work, when they come home from work, they can't find parking in some cases for half a mile to a mile around their homes. And the bottom row of pictures there are just a standard, regular day. There's not a daytime show going on. There's no school in that area anymore. So this is just during the course of the day. They can't get anywhere near their homes when they're trying to park. And you can imagine that would be exacerbated when there are shows at night and people are parking everywhere. We have people who work shift work, whether they're nurses or they work in other facilities. They have children now who are 16, 17, trying to drive and come home at night and find a place. And it's not always safe to ask your teenager to park a mile, 2 miles away in the pitch of the night. And both of these issues are kind of connected because the top row of pictures you can see there, that's one driveway. It's a narrow driveway anyway, and you can see I tried to give you some dates so you get a feel for it. The residents started sending me pictures right after that meeting so I could get an understanding of what was happening, and I haven't stopped receiving pictures. I keep receiving pictures because it keeps happening every single day, and it's not alleviating whatsoever. So the recommendations that we have here in the ordinance are based on that conversation with Officers Posey, and I think he spoke with Officer Freed, Mr. Micolo, Mr. Pontel, and Dolfo, would alleviate some of this. The time parking would allow our neighbors to have a better quality of life, would have better safety issues, and I don't want to repeat everything. Some of them might be coming up to speak, but I wanted to give you some background for it. And then the top row pictures there would just frankly allow these homeowners to get into their own property. I think it's kind of, the first picture there is probably the most appalling, that they block the driveway. And at this point, there's a little recourse we can do without some signage there to give some teeth to what we're looking to do here. So I ask for consideration moving forward.
The top row.
The top row.
These are 2 different blocks.
Same block.
Oh, it's the same block.
It's on the same block.
So this is from, like, where Penny's Flowers is?
From the Penny's Flowers will be at the bottom up until, what is that?
United Church of Christ.
United Church of Christ.
So it's not the block from United Church of Christ?
No. It's that first block coming off of Keswick,
Okay.
past Penny's
And
Flowers.
some of it is to be the west
So
side?
the top row of pictures, the second part of the ordinance would prevent parking between 2 signs so that this resident could get in and out of his driveway.
Okay.
And then the first part of the ordinance there, with the time parking, would allow the residents to come home from work at a reasonable hour and be able to park their cars. Again, recognizing that this is a high-traffic area, nobody's asking for no parking until 9 o'clock at night. It's not reasonable, and the residents have been great about that. But I think it is reasonable to say that you should be able to come home from work and find a parking spot somewhere near your house.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner, can I just make a comment, Madam Chair? Commissioner, you and the citizens have done a great job for us down there. We all know that the committee and everybody on the board tries to do what the citizens want, and it's going to work out well, and of course that's what we're here all about as well. But sometimes it's difficult to know what it is that's the right thing. One group will want a certain solution, but then you find out that there's others that don't. And both you and the citizens have done a great job of getting that information together. It made our job really quite easy, just bringing it forward to the board to do so. We wanted to thank you and the citizens that did all the legwork on this and did a great job, and we wanted to thank you for the job you did on it.
I appreciate that. And they did much of the legwork.
Commissioner Hecker?
Yeah, I wanted to briefly thank Officer Freed for his help with my portion of this ordinance. He's gone above and beyond in working to creatively address the challenging situation. So thank you, Al.
Any other? Commissioner Kalinowski?
Do the neighbors there find it more, the kiosk parking that they put there in that bank and that Keswick Theater, now, is it become a bigger problem now
I'm sure they'll speak about it. I'll let them
Yeah.
talk about it.
Sure, I see that. At the VFW, we offer the buses to park at our parking lot because of the fact there's so much traffic down in the Keswick Village. So we do get them to come up, but that's been a problem in our parking lot too with so many buses have come, and I've seen that neighborhood down there when the buses have nowhere to go. So we do offer them the parking at the VFW, so that helps a little bit. I know, but not much. You see what they're going through.
Every little bit helps.
Yep.
May I approach with you a picture for the new kiosk?
Yeah.
Last Monday. That's the new parking lot.
Yeah, exactly. They don't park in the parking lot. That's what I'm saying. I was there at the Mac machine.
I'm the guy.
I was there at the Mac machine.
I'm that guy.
And you can see no one's parking in that parking lot because
Nope.
it's a kiosk.
Because you have to
now.
pay for it now.
You have to pay to
Yep.
park. So,
And it's kind of confusing when you go in there, too.
so is that the owners of the new Keswick area there that have created that parking lot into a?
Yes, that's a separate issue, but it clearly is impacting the neighbors. The owner who bought that entire complex in the back owns that parking lot, and for years, the previous owner was not as conscientious about it and just let it be, and people were taking advantage of it. Some people were parking their cars for weeks on end. I think one car was there for several months, and I think the neighbors have tracked some of those. So the new owner came in, and for a variety of reasons, which private land ownership and insurance reasons, and what he thinks is trying to ferment his business, he put the kiosks in as a way to try to do that. And you can see the result immediately is that there's nobody parking in that parking lot
So
anymore.
I guess with all the money that they're making off these parkings that's not parking in there, are they cleaning out that dumpster that you guys have had problems with for years too down there?
That's actually improved.
It's
Larry-
improved.
Larry helped me with
Okay,
that.
Excuse me. If you would state your name and your
My name
address.
is Joe Palawota. I live at 2237 Wharton Road. I'm across the street from Penny's Flowers. I've lived there since 1996, and we were all excited about the new Keswick Commons and the redevelopment down there. But the parking has become quite an issue, and quite frankly, it's completely out of hand. We have cars parked in front of our houses for weeks at a time. Karen McNamara has had a car for close to 3 weeks that has not moved. Now, we called the police, and the police have instructed us, as long as it's got a registration and it is in running condition, they cannot do anything. So the problem is, the Keswick Commons owner has eliminated all the parking behind his building. The real issue is the people who live across the street, like where the barbecue is and Kelly Cataldi. They park their cars in front of our houses, and they're there for weeks, days, sometimes months at a time. We all bought into the Keswick Village. Now, the Keswick Theater has a show. We understand that. But now it's completely out of control. And we're just asking for your help. We would like to get 7-day-a-week permit parking between the hours of, say, 8 a.m. and 6 p.m., just so we have a chance to come home and park in front of our own homes. So if you could do that, we really appreciate it. I know my neighbors have other issues if they would like to come up.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you. Is there any questions?
Are there any other neighbors out in the audience who want to comment on this? You can come up now, state your name and address, please, for the record.
Thanks, Tom.
You need to be on the microphone if you want to be recorded for the record, please. You don't have to get up and speak, but if you want to, we need your name and address and your statement,
Okay,
please.
good evening. I'm Terry Curek, 2233 Wharton Road, and I think Joe, and I want to thank Tom very much. They've explained it. What it affects one house affects all of us on that block. It's from Donaldson Avenue to Abington Avenue, both sides of the street, and it's consistent. I've lived there all my life. My family's lived in my house for 62 years. It's never been like this. It's appalling.
Thank you for your comments. Any other
Commissioner,
comments?
is what we're doing tonight, is this going to solve this problem then?
It should definitely alleviate it, and there's enough parking issues in the area that it's not going to solve every parking issue, but it'll certainly alleviate some of the issues in general, and will certainly help that entire block of residents.
And then what we'll do, Commissioner, is after you see how this works out, if there's still problems, then we'll get back together and we'll take a look at it again.
Absolutely. I think the first meeting we talked about the idea that this is going to have to take some review and feel the impact of it. But rather than waiting and just hoping it's going to get better, I think the idea is let's address some of the concerns right now, quality of life issues for our residents are going to be important, but we will keep an eye on it. The residents have been great about keeping me informed, and I can pass that along to you or Officer Freed and Officer Posey, who I'm sure love hearing my voice on the phone. Don't say no.
Do any other residents have comments on this issue? Any other commissioners?
He would like to say some more thing.
We have a few neighbors who have medical issues. And in this picture here, you'll see someone who parked in front of a driveway. They just park their car and they walk away. And we're afraid to confront them. But our neighbors are now, with the medical issues, this could become a real problem. So if you need to get an ambulance up this driveway, it's not going to happen. So.
And that's a good point. The one part of the ordinance that would cover the driveways, that second driveway is an issue where there was an ambulance that could not get up to the house a couple of months ago, a couple of years ago. They had to carry the patient out and then leave the ambulance was in the street, where they had to bring the patient out because the driveway was blocked. So we're dealing with a variety of safety issues.
Thank you for that comment.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners' comments?
Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane. I just want to bring up right now, while you're looking at this problem, that in the zoning rewrites, we have a lot of shared parking and places where we're actually allowing people to put in more than they had before, assuming that the parking can be shared. And so this kind of thing is going to happen again and again when we pass rewrites that overbuild in that manner. And Abington all over is going to lose the free parking, and people are going to take whatever residents have now. And it's going to go that way. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other? Commissioner Myers?
Actually, I have a question for the solicitor. The basis of this problem has happened in other areas, and we all know that because Officer Freed has educated us, that state law permits, as long as the car is currently registered and currently inspected, that it can be parked on the public street for as long as it wants until one of those two expire. Are we permitted to do any kind of a township ordinance that would set a limit of time that a car is parked on the street and not moved, and not using the registration and the inspection as the guide?
The general rule is that if parking is permitted on a particular street, and you don't have meter parking or anything along those lines, if this is just a regular space without any meters, and the car is registered and inspected and it's visibly operable, that you can't do anything to prevent those people from leaving it parked out in front of their house for 30 days, 40 days, 90 days in a row without moving it. You can look in, obviously there are exceptions when it comes to certain emergency situations or things along those lines. But unless you can determine and figure out a way why there is a compelling interest to prevent that, you're going to have a hard time getting past the vehicle code, which says you're registered and inspected, you're allowed to park on a public thoroughfare, park in a place that is for parking of vehicles. So the answer is it's very difficult to do it. It's usually in a narrow exception, and I'm not sure if what I'm hearing tonight would fit into that narrow exception. We could certainly take a look at it, but.
I understand, but I'd like to just use an example, and this has actually happened twice in the ward that I represent, where a car has been parked on a residential street, and it turned out the car was not owned by anyone on the street, but the owner was in jail, and for who knows how long. So the car could remain for months without being moved, and in one case, it was last winter with all of the snow plowing difficulties that we had, and of course, when you have a car that's never going to be moved, it's going to be plowed in. So is there is this something that we could really take a look at?
If the situation that you're describing has two separate issues. One is if you're talking about certain residential streets and you want to create permit parking, that only those can park overnight for who are live in that neighborhood, and that begins to become a bit of a problem. And you're going to get a lot of residents who are going to be upset when their kids come home for the holidays, and so you're going to run into that problem. The second issue you indicated is when there's a snow emergency, and if somebody doesn't get a car off the street, it can be towed. But what happens very often is there are so many cars, we don't have enough tow trucks out there to move them, and the plow goes by and puts a big pack of snow behind it, and then sometimes it'll sit that way for months and months. So it's a difficult issue. It's one that every municipality deals with, and there are always problems with each solution you try to come up with. And again, as you indicated, permit parking gets to be a nightmare for the municipality and for the police department as well.
Well, we all know the solution isn't permit parking, because then isn't always permit parking, because that would be on every street, and that's ridiculous.
Commissioner, we'll look into that and report back to you. I'm aware of some examples in other municipalities where they have a means of dealing with that. We'll see if that can possibly apply to our situation, and we'll report back at a future public safety meeting.
Thank you.
I know you have a question, but I want to ask a quick question, too. And I probably should know this from my driver's test, but I don't. Is there a ordinance or a law about how far from a driveway? Because I see in this, I know this has been a problem in my area, and I see in this last picture here that the cars aren't actually blocking the driveway, but they're like right on top of the edge of it.
Yeah, that's correct, Commissioners and Madam Chairman. There is no law or anything that limits where a car can park up to a driveway. As long as technically the driveway has access to it, where you can get in and out of it, there's nothing that we can really do about that. Now, obviously, if they're parked in front of the driveway blocking it, we can come out and ticket it and try to find the owner to move it, or in worst case scenario, have it towed from in front of the driveway. But unfortunately, if that driveway apron's open and the car's got its bumper right up to there, pretty much there's not a lot we can do about that. Also, just to add, in the driveway situation, if somebody does find that there's a car blocking their driveway, they can call 911 and they'll send a car out, and we'll deal with that situation, whether we can track down the owner and have it moved, or again, we can ticket it and have it towed out of there. So,
thank you, Commissioner Spiegelman.
Thank you, Commissioner Schreiber. This question is just based on this follow-up to the solicitor's answer, and this is a question for Officer Freed. Are there published standards of what constitutes a car that is or isn't visibly operable, or is that something that's on a officer-by-officer sort of general judgment call basis? Like, is there a list of, okay, this is what an officer is looking for?
I mean, it's going to be officer discretion, but in most cases, and most of the complaints we get, the cars are pretty much just sitting there as a car. There's nothing visibly wrong with them. Although we have people that say the car's been sitting there and it's not moved and it doesn't run, usually it's the person that's making the complaint. We have no way of proving that. So if all four tires are inflated and it's sitting there and the glass isn't broken out and it's in a legal parking spot and it's got registration and inspection, that's what we go by. I mean, there are some circumstances where it may have one flat tire. Again, that's a temporary fix. They can put a spare on there, so that wouldn't necessarily deem that it's not operable. Now, obviously, if all four tires are flat or 3 out of 4 tires are flat, that's a different story, or the windows are broken out, that type of thing, or we can actually see engine parts hanging out from underneath the car, then that's something we could probably act on. But in most cases, the cars look like a normal car just parked along the curb, so there's not a whole lot we can do about that.
Gotcha. Thank you, Officer Freed.
There are no other comments. I think we're ready to vote on this. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And that concludes our agenda this evening.
Comments at the end of the meeting?
Do you have a comment at the end of this meeting?
I do. Thank you. Thank you. Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane. And so first of all, I'd like to thank Lieutenant Warner and those that did the presentation. We thank you for we really appreciate. Those are the things that keep this township pretty top-notch. So thank you. I wanted to share with all of you, and especially Commissioner Myers, some of my life experience, which pretty much says that when somebody misspeaks and apologizes, we know that's a mistake. When they say something that doesn't seem to be true and they don't want to apologize, that's usually intentional. And
I'm sorry, is this public safety related?
It is 100% public safety
It doesn't sound that way to me.
Well, if you listen for a minute, you'll see why. Because
through
when we
listening.
have our top leaders in the township literally allowed to say something that may be completely untrue, and then the person who they are discrediting with those statements is not allowed to get up and correct the record. That untruth sits out there. It is the mantle of power that is had by these leaders is absolutely, they are in charge of our safety. They are in charge, as you've seen tonight, of our lives. And so what is extremely important is that they are held to the highest standards of truth and integrity. And in this township, it has not been that way. And Commissioner Myers and Chief Kelly both, I think, have had time to look at...
Please do not use people's names in this, and also stick to public safety. Thank you.
This is public
not,
safety.
it really is. And I know that you have a great way of kind of making things connect, but this really isn't a public safety issue.
If you don't think the chief of police perhaps making a mistake or perhaps purposely saying something untrue does not involve our safety, he is in charge of every aspect of my safety.
Thank you for your comments.
I would like to know
This
if
meeting is
they've
now
looked at
adjourned.
that, if they've looked at that tape, and if they would like to offer.
All right, I am very happy to call to order the December 2nd, 2015 Abington Township Public Affairs Committee meeting, and let us please start with a roll call. Here.
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 Here. All right, that was the roll call. Let us start with the approval of the minutes. This is a motion to approve the minutes of the October 28th, 2015 Public Affairs Committee meeting, and I so move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any corrections or comments about the minutes? All right, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are approved. The Parks and Recreation Report. From the Director thereof, Mr. Wendell, I call on you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only thing I'd like to mention tonight is that the Bureau is going to be going to New York on Tuesday next week with a full bus for the Radio City Music Hall show. So everybody should have a good day out there. And if you're interested in doing it, make sure you get in touch with us early next year when the bus goes up.
I heard that sold out. Congratulations on selling that out.
Thank you.
I guess if I want to be there, I have to join the Rockettes again, and it didn't work out that well last time. We have one item tonight, and here is that.
Let that happen.
Here's. I can kick.
We would all go see the.
I can kick.
I'll give extra room on the bus.
Well, you would need extra room on the bus if I were to come anyway. So our one item tonight is PA1, Abington Township's reimbursement to HUD. This is a motion to approve Abington Township's reimbursement to HUD with non-federal funds in the amount of $125,000, $125,130.14 for noncompliance with federal regulations. HUD issued two findings during its on-site monitoring visit conducted on January 26th through 29th, 2015, which are, 1, the 2013 after-school program fell below the minimum standard fell below the minimum standard and has to reimburse $16,500. And 2, the owner-occupied housing rehabilitation program could not provide proof of cost reasonableness for contract modifications of 6 properties in the amount of $180,630.14 from fund balance, and I so move.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Mr. Struther, do you want to give us the rundown on this?
Sure.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. In January of this year, officials from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development performed a routine on-site monitoring of several of the township's programs funded with the CDBG funds. We received the results of this on-site monitoring in March, which had two findings. The township immediately responded to the majority of them. However, in mid-October, several months ago, HUD had sent us a communication asking us to wrap up the remaining items. At that time, I sent a response letter to HUD requesting a 3-month period to review the larger item, the owner-occupied rehabilitation program, where there was documentation missing for cost reasonableness. These are projects that was performed before my time, and I'm unfamiliar with it, and will take time to do a forensic accounting and review. So I've put in writing a request for a 3-month extension to review that, and I have not heard back from HUD, but however, we are proceeding to perform that review of the files. The other item is with the after-school program. That program did fall below the minimum standard of 51% of the attendees have to be low to moderate-income households, and that is what we have deemed that we will probably have to pay. The motion that is before you is that in the event that the staff is not successful in the appeal to the federal government, that the township will allocate the funds to reimburse HUD for this claim of noncompliance. The best-case scenario, we will have to pay $16,500. The worst-case scenario is we have to pay $125,130.14.
Well, thank you for that explanation. So basically, we are, obviously, the situation has been remediated as far as moving into the future and the possibility of incurring any future penalties. So everything's all shored up against that happening. Is that safe to say?
Yes, that's correct.
So now, in addition to the remediation, this is really about the appeal process. And you said that's going to take 3 months to find. Is it going to take 3 months to find out from them if the larger of these two penalties we're still subject to?
Sure. No, I've requested 3 months to do the investigation, to look at the files. These are projects that I'm not familiar with, so I have to look at the files, go out to the site, maybe talk to the contractors to document the reasonableness of the cost modifications that were performed during construction.
Okay. Manager LaFever.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just clarify, these discrepancies in record keeping occurred prior to Mr. Struther's employment here, and he's been working actively trying to reconstruct those files. The reason the motion is before you this evening, in the event we do have to refund money to the federal government, we're asking it to come from 2005 funds, because we know we're going to be in a strong position at the end of this year. We have no idea what 2016 holds for us, so we're better off if we do have to refund money, it comes from this year's allocation. We did locate some additional information this week in the Finance Department in relation to these 6 properties that may be helpful in our appeal with HUD. So we're cautiously optimistic that we'll be successful. I cannot guarantee it, but we're cautiously optimistic that we will not have to refund the $125,000 that's before you this evening. But in the event we do so, we want to make sure it comes from this year's allocation.
Right, understood. I'm sure there are members of the committee and other commissioners who have questions, so I'll entertain those now. Commissioner Schreiber.
So is the only audit, or I guess is that what you had called it?
It's a monitoring, on-site monitoring.
Is for the second finding, not for the first one about the schooling? I mean, it's the after-school program. We're saying that, yes, they are correct on that one?
That's correct.
That was the one that was taking place in Roslyn, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
When the program closed, I had a lot of complaints about that from people who had their children in that program. And so I'm wondering if at one point, if they did meet the requirements and then maybe whatever happened, that, they had more income at some point and the income could have gone down again or whatever, because I received a lot of emails right after that closed.
That's correct, Commissioner. If you look at, when I looked at the files and going back 10, 12 years, there was great need in the Roslyn area and surrounding areas, but the empirical data and information, census tracts, shows that there was a great impact and a rise in income, where that at one time there were census tracts that were eligible for federal funding, but those certain census tracts are no longer low-income designated. So in a way, it's a good thing, and the innovation that the township has done, through the approval of the governing body, made a great impact, and there's no longer a need for assistance for various different programs in different areas.
So it hasn't been moved to another area, it just doesn't exist anymore, is that correct?
Yes, in short, there's not as many income-eligible census tracts as it was 10 years ago as it exists today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Jones.
Sticking on the after-school program, if I read correctly, it was 14 out of 28, so it was 50%, with the threshold being 51%. And is there any way, I don't know, do they look at that as a snapshot, or do they look at that as the continued attendance and participation through the program? So I know sometimes with federal programs, you have to have a student or a child is only counted if they have a certain number of days that they've attended the program, and then they count. But if it's snapshot, there may be a possibility that at the beginning of the program, there was compliance. So I don't know if A, which way they're looking at it, or if B, there could be an ask to say, we don't comply this way, but, could we get a waiver or something, because maybe through another methodology we do comply. It's only 1%.
Yes, it is heartbreaking that we were off by 1%, but to answer your question, it was an actual number. There were 28 participants that started at the beginning of the year, and at the end of the year it was the same amount. And we looked at those 28. We gave survey forms for each individual participant, and it turned out that 14 were eligible and 14 were not eligible, thereby putting us at 50%, 1% below the minimum requirement.
And there's no waiver ability.
There's no gray area.
And no grace range.
No.
Commissioner, if I can just start with folks on the committee. Commissioner Sanchez, did you have a question?
Director Strother, is there, you're probably an expert in this stuff, but is there a need for council to represent in something like this? I mean, or if it goes beyond, is there an appeal beyond HUD that might be, taken it like before an administrative law judge or something? I mean, because it'd be nice to try to save, hopefully you're successful in round one, but the 108,000 would be a nice number to mitigate.
It's a tough mountain to climb. The federal government is very clear on the release of federal funds. It's well documented. There's a tremendous amount of regulations. It's very clear. In the case of the after-school program, we were at 50%. Relative to the owner-occupied program, there was approval of additional funds outside the procurement process, which the documents just weren't there when the federal officials were on site. Going through the files just could not create the paper trail. The bottom line is the files have to speak for themselves when you're looking at them.
Is that?
Yeah.
I have a question. Mr. Struthers, do they allow for change orders? I know we talked about them in projects related to construction, but you have, is there not wiggle room, but is there compensation to allow for change orders during a rehab of a house that allows for an original estimate to be escalated to a higher number without getting penalized for it?
Yes, there is provisions. Change orders are permissible, but as I said earlier, the federal government have a very specific prescribed way on how that's supposed to be executed, and unfortunately, we couldn't produce that documentation in the files for these 6 homes.
Okay. Commissioner DePlacido, you had a question?
Yeah, I just had a quick question about the monies. So the money values that we're talking about right now, they were granted or given to us, spent, and now they need to be repaid, or are these fines?
They're not fines. There were funds that were given to the township. The township did release it, and unfortunately, we did not follow the protocol for the release for the contract modifications.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hecker.
Manager LaFever, a question for you. So we're anticipating that we would take this out of any surplus derived from 2015.
That's correct, if
So-
necessary.
If necessary. So then theoretically, that would impact on the discussions we've been having over the last couple of weeks about the monies available if we exceed the 3-month expenditure cap to be applied to the Permanent Improvement Fund, the OPEB, and the following year's general fund budget.
That is correct.
Okay.
Commissioner Klein.
I'm going to have a little twist here. So the investigation that you're doing, so if I understand correctly, the original work that was approved under the owner-occupied work through HUD was already included. This is actually modifications to the work that was done. I think you've said this several times. I'm just making sure I understand it. Like basically what President Lugar said, they're change orders in a sense. And those were not, you haven't been able to find the documentation. Are you concerned that this is purely just lost documents? Or are you looking at all possibilities?
It's not lost documents, but it's more of the absence of documenting the event.
Okay. So I guess, are you looking at all possibilities?
Yes.
Wrapped around this? Because without saying it, I think you understand what I'm asking. I just...
No, I don't believe, what you're stating is happening. I think it was just the absence of documenting events that happened during construction.
Okay. I would ask that we just keep ourselves wide open. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there any other questions or comments from commissioners? From staff? From our audience?
Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane. Could I just ask, I know we have a lot of people lined up for the rehabilitation of the homes, and how are they chosen? Are they chosen by a first come, first served, and they're eligible, or are they chosen by the most needy first, so people who might be losing their homes if they didn't have this help would get chosen first? Could I ask in what way they're chosen?
Mr. Chairman, may I advise that she just make all her comments, and then if you choose to have any of her answers, this is a public comment period, not a public debate.
I
Just
concur with that.
looking for some clarification.
Okay, well, if that's the extent of your comment, I'm going to ask Director Strother, are you in a position to answer that question now?
Yes.
Okay. Then please feel free.
We currently have a waiting list where persons will just call in, and it's basically a 2 to 3 year wait. That's how long it takes to come by to enter in the program. Once we do get to an individual, a packet is sent out to the individual that called that asks for a series of information to verify that they're income eligible. The whole thrust to qualify the program, you have to be income eligible. If once they submit the documentations and third-party review documentations, verifications, tax returns, W-4s, a list of items just to verify that they are eligible. If they are eligible, then we move forward with the program.
Thank you, Director Strother. Thank you for your question. Thank you for your answer.
Appreciate you having it answered.
All right. If there are no further questions or comments, we will go ahead and vote on PA1. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? PA1 passes. And now, any general comments regarding the public affairs arena? And it is an arena.
So I just would, Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane, and I just would like to thank you, because that's what we hope from our commissioners, what just happened there. That was my commissioner trying to prevent me from getting a simple answer, and I actually asked it here because I was hoping that other people would hear. I know that there are a lot of people interested in this program. And I've talked to some of them personally, so we definitely need to improve this process. This is public affairs. This is what public affairs is about, communication, the tools. What just happened at the public safety meeting a minute ago when we talk about the chief safety officer in this township and whether the integrity has a place where it can come into question at all, and where something is done when it is coming into question, that is something that we need to deal with in this township. And how it was handled at the public safety meeting is a disgrace. That is not going to change anything. We have, there were probably, since the election, interestingly, there was a huge jump in the bashing that went on, okay? And I guess we had a few people secure in their places. But the problem is, when there is a misunderstanding of any sort, and it can affect public safety and the public knowledge and the trust in our public officials and in our elected officials, we need to have the truth in order to elect the right people. Okay, so when that happens, there needs to be a place for people to come up and politely correct the record. It doesn't have to be a long debate. Nobody has to scream at each other. There shouldn't be profanity. But there should be a place where the record can be corrected. Commissioner Luker said recently that nobody called me a liar. I hope he's watched the tape where the man sitting next to him, Commissioner Klein, did indeed call me a liar, and Commissioner Luker, in charge of the meeting, didn't stop him. Now, I seem to be stopped every time I mention a name. I would like to have the same respect back at the other side of the podium. What Commissioner Klein was saying was absolute slander, because what I was saying was true. There needs to be a place to correct the record. There needs to be a place to change this process. I would appreciate a comment or an apology from Commissioner Luker, from Commissioner Myers about the violations and the crashes. And Commissioner Klein, there's about 5 things. I mentioned 2 of them tonight.
And you'll probably want an apology from me because your time is up now.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Well,
Can I make a comment?
Commissioner Klein, yes, you may make a comment, Commissioner Klein.
Don't hold your breath.
All right.
What did he say?
I believe it was don't hold your breath. For the minutes. All right, then. With that, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
And we're adjourned.